An attempted coup d'etat has been crushed in Turkey. The coup has been called a godsend by the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and the real loser in this mess is the EU and in particular Germany. And it will all be explained. To understand Turkey, you have to understand this man, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. At the end of World War I, Turkey as a nation did not exist, but its greatest city, Istanbul, was the center of the once massive but exhausted Ottoman Empire. Standing on the losing side of the conflict, its empire was gutted and partitioned by the victorious Allies, which gave rise to several of the modern and mostly failed nation-states in the Middle East. It was also during this time that the great commander of the defense of Gallipoli from Anzac and British incompetence, Mustafa Kemal, led the Turkish national movement to victory in what they termed their War of Independence against the Allies and their proxies, namely Greeks and Armenians. In doing so, Mustafa Kemal became the father of all Turks, or Atatürk, and after his reforms, the Turks created the modern secular Republic of Turkey in March 1924, and the Ottoman Caliphate was officially abolished. It is in these terms, as an imploded empire, more than a nation-state, that we must understand when looking at Turkey. A country, I might add, or the city of Istanbul to be exact, that your humble narrator had the fortune of living and working in several years ago. So it fell to the military, who drew its officer class mostly from wealthy and secularist families, to be the guardians of the secular nature of the republic that Ataturk founded. And they interceded and overthrew the government 3 times between 1960 and 1980, when it veered too far away from secularist principles. However, the country that Ataturk envisioned, one that drew upon Western secularism and at all costs was to keep Islam out of the political process, is dying. Enter the unabashed Islamist Recep Erdogan. In 2004, Erdogan became the president of Turkey and has since gathered more and more power for himself. During his reign, the military has slowly been purged of secularists, and even before this coup was attempted, a large portion of the military leadership had already been removed. These were likely the last vestiges of a truly secular military. However, currently what is happening is more complicated than that. The current ruling party, or AK party, that came to power as a coalition of Islamists and liberals, is newly at odds with a group known as the Gulen movement, a powerful religious fraternity whose global network of media outlets, schools, and commercial enterprises make it a serious player in Turkish politics. It in turn is led by a lay preacher named Fethullah Gulen, who is self-exiled and living in Pennsylvania. So, a quick explanation of the official story of the coup in Turkey. The Turkish government said Saturday that it had suppressed a coup by a military faction and arrested thousands of soldiers after a chaotic night that saw armed attacks on the national parliament and an apparent assassination attempt against Erdogan. The rebel army faction, who called themselves the Peace Council, said they were trying to overthrow the government to protect human rights and restore democracy from Erdogan's Justice and Development Party, which has repeatedly faced criticism from human rights groups and Western allies over its brutal crackdowns on anti-government protesters. However, Erdogan has blamed his old scapegoat, Gulen, for organizing and orchestrating the uprising. Gulen, the president's rival, has often been blamed for political unrest in Turkey. But the big unanswered question was, what was the motive of this coup? Well, in some quarters, Erdogan had been planning a major military purge next month directed against any Gulenist supporters, who are not secular, I may add, who hadn't already been removed from the military ranks, and it's possible that this action united officers behind the coup. The purge would have added still more to Erdogan's control over Turkish political life. Already in control over much of the news media, he has been attempting to extend his grasp over the judiciary and is pressing hard for a change in the constitution that will give him far greater executive powers. However, Gulen has hit back, appearing to accuse Erdogan of conducting a deadly false flag operation and comparing him to Adolf Hitler. Gulen said that reprisals likely await those alleged to have plotted the coup, comparing Erdogan's tactics to those used by Adolf Hitler to clear the political field in Germany in the 1930s, which turned into a police state. When we look at the aftermath of Turkey's failed and painfully disorganized military coup attempt, we ask, who wins? To which we answer, Erdogan, of course. This uprising is a gift from God to us because this will be a reason to cleanse our army, Erdogan stated earlier on Friday night, addressing a large and desperate crowd of his supporters. Soner Kawapte, director of the Turkish research at the Washington Institute, said Erdogan had been strengthened by the coup. He said the president is now a sort of mythical figure. He also said it will allow him to crack down on liberty and freedom of association, assembly, expression, and media in ways that we haven't seen before, and find strong public support within the country. But this whole affair looks to be entirely disorganized and executed with half measures. I think I don't have to remind anyone listening that when a military coup takes place in the Middle East, they are, without exception, A, ruthless, B, extremely well organized and planned, and C, succeed on virtually every occasion. But not this one, and this throws up so many red flags. Did Erdogan pull off his own Reichstag fire? Maybe. I have a feeling that this question, while not taken up by the controlled media, of course, will be thoroughly examined by the fringe media over the next few weeks and months. But in any case, the counter-coup has begun, with Erdogan purging thousands of the judiciary as well as in the military. And he has come out of this coup as a strengthened king and hero to his uneducated masses of Islamist followers. And when looking at who loses in terms of this coup, it must be Europe. This is a disaster for the EU, as it looks as though the ransom, or tribute if you like, in the amount of 5 billion euros that Chancellor Angela Merkel was prepared to pay for Turkey to hold back the flood of migrants from around the Middle East and further afield, looks as though it may be scuttled. Currently, arrivals in Greece have fallen sharply since the decision to return all newcomers to Turkey. But with this failed coup, Europe is bracing for a fresh migrant surge. And in the post-coup crackdown, with the possibility of executions, means that migrants could argue that it is no longer a safe country to be sent back to. It is also possible the chaos in Turkey will itself increase numbers wanting to reach the welfare states of Northern Europe. Either way, Erdogan wins, Europe loses. Erdogan is a democratically elected president with a dictator-like mindset and has delusions and aspirations of a revived neo-Ottoman empire. But thus far, democracy and elections have served him well. In abandoning the principles of Ataturk, Turkey is truly lost and will in time once again become subsumed in Islam and ruled as a theocratic dictatorship.